In 2015, Ashley Thompson was a nurse earning $50,000 a year. She lived in a two-bedroom apartment outside San Francisco. Monthly rent, $1,850. 10 years passed. By 2025, her salary had climbed to $67,000, a 35% raise. But now she lives in a one-bedroom. Monthly rent, $2,950. The numbers grew. The life shrank. Yes, the salary went up, but she pays more rent for a smaller apartment than 10 years ago. This is not failure. This is the story of an era where you must run harder just to stay in place. Imagine running on a treadmill. Speed up and you can run. But the faster you go, the faster the belt moves. No matter how fast you sprint, the structure won't let you advance. A raise isn't progress. It's the struggle to hold your ground. Why does this happen? Because the money you earn moves slowly. The money you owe moves much faster. In 21 of 24 OECD nations, real purchasing power actually declined over the past 15 years. Nominal numbers rose. But what people could buy shrank. There is one exception. Denmark saw real wages rise 8.7% in the same period. Why does the same capitalism produce such different results? The answer comes later. First, look at the structure. This treadmill has 3 gears. Gear 1. Wages move once a year. Prices move every day. Every January or April, your company announces the raise. That number reflects last year's inflation. But prices have already started moving since the new year began. The National Bureau of Economic Research analyzed 20 million wage records. 35% of workers who stayed at the same job saw their base pay unchanged, not a single dollar, for an entire year. The average wage adjustment cycle, roughly 18 months. Prices rise in real time. Wages get trimmed at the negotiating table, once every 18 months. When the 2021 energy crisis hit, European workers were locked into existing contracts. While inflation surged from 8% to 10%, wages couldn't move. The gap came straight out of workers' pockets. ECB data. In 2022, Eurozone nominal wage growth was 2.9%. Inflation was 8%. Workers were robbed of 5%, without a single negotiation. Only then did they begin recovering it in subsequent rounds. 4.2% in 2023, 4.7% in 2024. This is catch-up. A raise is not compensation. It's a partial retrieval of what was already taken. Gear 2. Productivity doubled. Wages got a third of that. From 1979 to 2024, U.S. net productivity grew roughly 90%. But real hourly compensation for typical workers rose only about 34% in the same period. We produced more. We didn't get more. Where did the difference go? In the 1950s and 60s, if productivity rose 1%, wages rose 1%. Economists call this the golden age of capitalism. Then the 1980s severed the connection. Union density collapsed. Maximizing shareholder value became the core corporate objective. The obligation to share the fruits of growth vanished. Even when companies delivered better results, the money went to shareholders first, not to the workers on the floor. According to Economic Policy Institute analysis, top earners' wages exploded over 180% in the same period. While typical workers walked in place, a tiny executive class saw their compensation nearly double. Measured against the 1979 baseline, most of the value created by productivity gains went to shareholders and executives, not workers. The fruits of productivity flowed from labor to capital, from the many to the few. This is the great decoupling. The structural distortion between effort and reward hardened since 1979. Think back to your salary 10 years ago. Is your current salary higher? If so, can you still buy what you could 10 years ago? Housing, healthcare, education. If the answer diverges across these three, the raise was an illusion. Gear 3. The official inflation number is not the inflation you actually pay. The government releases a consumer price index every month. In February 2026, the U.S. official CPI was 2.4%. Looks stable. But in the same period, hospital costs rose 6.7%. Housing costs rose 4.6%. The news says stability. Your bank account says otherwise. Why the gap? The U.S. Census Bureau doesn't use actual home prices to calculate housing costs for owner-occupants. It uses a hypothetical rent, what the home could theoretically earn if rented out. Even if home prices double, the official index absorbs it slowly, with a delay. For someone who bought their house 10 years ago and someone buying for the first time today, inflation is a completely different number. In the U.S. over the past decade, home prices rose 89%. Compounding at roughly 6.6% annually, rents rose 54%. Meanwhile, nurse wages rose 40.4%, teacher wages 6.6%. The hardest working people couldn't keep up with the price of a home. Australia and Japan are no different. As of 2025, Australia's official inflation rate was in the 3% range. But housing costs jumped up to 7.2%. Education costs rose 5.4%. The official number looks stable, but the items middle-class households actually spend on are running at an entirely different pace. Japan's government directly suppressed education costs, pushing them down 4.5%. But food prices exploded 6.8%. When the state caps one pressure point, the shock erupts somewhere else. Official statistics and the real cost of living are not the same number. Three gears mesh together. Wages move slowly. The fruits of productivity pool to the few. Official statistics hide the real cost of living. When all three operate simultaneously, purchasing power erodes, no matter how much the nominal salary rises. And when all three spin at once, no individual effort can reverse the structure alone. The treadmill's incline keeps steepening. Let's return to Ashley for a moment. Over 10 years, her salary grew more than 40%. Compared to peers in the same field, that's holding up. But rent rose 54%. Home prices jumped 89%. Her shrinking life isn't a failure of effort. The belt was moving faster than she could run. All three gears were turning against her at the same time. What happens when this structure passes a tipping point? From 2010 to 2022, UK teachers' real purchasing power declined between 9% and 15%, depending on grade. The Institute for Fiscal Studies recorded that senior teachers' wages fell by £6,600 in real terms over 10 years. This isn't a statistic. It means lives actually went backward. Nominal wages rose every year. Real purchasing power fell every year. Then 2022 inflation detonated. As UK prices surged to 10.1%, the government offered teachers a 5% raise, nominally an increase. In real terms, another 5% cut. And on February 1, 2023, 300,000 members of the National Education Union took to the streets. The strike vote, 90.4% in favor. Half of 23,000 schools shut down. 31% of parents couldn't go to work. 28% couldn't go at all. The ONS counted over 3.5 million working days lost to strikes between June 2022 and March 2023. Suppress wages, and a larger bill comes due, charged to society as a whole. This cost isn't paid by workers alone. So why did real wages rise in some countries under the same inflation? If Ashley had been a nurse in Denmark, what would have happened? In Denmark, low-wage jobs represent just 8% of the workforce. In the US, it's 33%. Same capitalism. Why a fourfold gap? Denmark has no statutory minimum wage. Instead, 82% of workers are covered by collective agreements. The private export sector sets the wage baseline first. The public sector indexes to that. If inflation runs higher than expected, Automatic corrections kick in afterward. No need to negotiate individually with your employer, the way American workers must. The system fights for you. In 2023 and 2024 combined, roughly 10% nominal raises were executed through labor management agreements. As prices rose, wages followed, automatically. The US and Denmark faced the same global inflation. From 2010 to 2024, US real wages rose just 0.18%. In the same period, Denmark's system absorbed the shock. The difference: a structure where individuals must fight their employers one by one, versus a system that self-corrects automatically. Capitalism itself isn't the problem. The rules governing how wages are set, that's the problem. Same shock, different outcomes. If outcomes differ, the difference comes from design, not from people. This system also benefits Danish companies. A low-wage job share of just 8% means companies can't squeeze wages to generate profit. To sustain high wage floors, they must invest in automation and process innovation. Paradoxically, this is what drove Denmark's industrial structure toward high value-added output. Rules that protect wages made companies more competitive. The rules that defended wages forced innovation. This principle doesn't only operate at the national level. The same logic has played out inside companies. When the 1984 recession hit, Nucor Steel chose differently. Instead of mass layoffs, every employee from CEO to floor worker took the same percentage pay cut. Not a single person was let go. The result? Workers began voluntarily repairing broken equipment without supervisors. They volunteered for overtime. For 25 consecutive years after, no losses were recorded. Total shareholder return, 350%. When everyone shared the loss and then the gain, ownership emerged. There is a larger question. Over the past 20 years, the S&P 500's annualized compound return was roughly 11%. 20-year cumulative growth, nearly 700%. Global average wage growth over the same period, 2.5% to 3.5% annually. Assets double in 6.5 years. Wages take over 25 years to double. One side runs, the other walks. As this gap compounds, even identical starting lines lead to completely different finishing points. Economist Piketty expressed this as R greater than G. The return on capital permanently exceeds economic growth. The wealth of those who own assets compounds faster than the wealth of those who only work. This is not a matter of individual effort. Even with an identical starting point, if one person owns assets and another only earns wages, the gap will widen over time. That's how the structure works. The rules of the game operate this way. Arguing over your raise percentage means you're already playing a losing game. When a $400,000 home appreciates 6.6% annually, the price tag changes by $26,000 per year. That's more than a teacher or nurse can save in a year, after taxes and living expenses. This is the point where trying to catch up through labor and savings alone becomes mathematically impossible. When this gap compounds, the entire economy fractures. Consumer spending shrinks. Debt swells. The 2008 financial crisis was the result of this accumulated gap finally erupting as household debt. It looked like personal failure. It was structural inevitability. Running faster on the treadmill won't move you forward. As Denmark shows, the rules governing the belt speed must change. A system where wages automatically follow when prices rise. A structure where the fruits of productivity return to all workers. A method where statistics properly reflect the real cost of living. If these three don't change, the treadmill keeps running. Running harder is not the answer. The real question is, who controls the speed of this machine, and whether those rules can change. You cannot stop inflation, but you can reduce your chances of being deceived. Don't just watch how much your salary grew. Watch how far home prices have run away, whether your savings can keep pace with asset appreciation, and whether your income is tied only to labor, not a 3% raise. Put a 6% housing cost and an 11% asset return on the same screen. When that frame changes, how you read the same situation changes too.